nobody will intimidate us over our national park resources. Whether you are who, whether you are who.
368 kilometers from Kampala, deep into the great hills of Kigezi, Kisoro Rubuguri is where the story of Kanyamunyu begins. The man who raised an army for conservation.
Kagenda yambere ndayengenenga nagenda banshagara mu gwaliro tanayigira gatengu ganye banshemeza bamwihamu namara kumwihamu namureta kunamuretire namuhisa ishe yamweta ngo nifuderi kabarebe nyo namweta tindi mwebwe tanjaye baruhanga owampa umwana.
Kanyamunyu is the bird, black and white bird, called the wagtail in English, pied wagtail. This bird is the bird, a totem of Mujesela clan. So, being a Mujesela, my father was called Kanyamunyu, and my father called me Kabalebe.
We are so much attached to that bird, and we believe when you are in a garden and you see that bird come to your land where you are digging, it means you will get a very, very big harvest. If you are building, if you are marrying, and that bird comes to your home, you will have children in numbers, but also there's a high likelihood of getting twins.
In the 1980s, Kanyamunyu, then a dancer, poacher and teacher, was at his lowest point of life when he found his way to glory.
When I was teaching at Rubuguri Primary School, I couldn't manage to buy myself a bottle of beer. I could take crude water. So I reached in a bar, a man called Nsabimana, who was a Funde mansion. He was taking a beer called Kyam, extra strong brew. I asked him, why can't you buy me a soda? I punch in my crude wallet. So Nsabimana bought me a soda, I punched, I started dancing. He told me in Chifumbira, Kanyamunyu yari umugabo asigimbwa. Meaning, Kanyamunyu was a man and left dogs. I looked at myself, I hated myself, I said let me beat him, but I realized the man was right.
So Kanyamunyu Paul is the one who started most of the activities here. He was even an international trader because he could take timber to Rwanda, take timber to Nairobi. He also could cultivate extensively because he had a lot of land, and he was the first man to have his land with a title. However, when he died, some of the step-brothers of Fidelis sold off almost everything.
So when Nsabimana told me like that, I left the alcohol, I became a CVD. I had to change my name from Kabalebe to Kanyamunyu. I repeated senior 4 to replace Kanyamunyu on my certificate, just like that. It is not easy to follow the footsteps of a prominent man. So from that time, I started calling myself Kanyamunyu Fidelis. I started thinking how to bring the glory of Kanyamunyu, and I started thinking how to bring business in Rubuguri town.
Unlike his father Kanyamunyu Paul, who had the forest in his favor, Kanyamunyu Fidelis would be jailed for years for attempting to harvest the park the same way his father did.
I went to Bwindi. It is so unfortunate. Here, the communities in the southern sector of Bwindi were gold miners, timber dealers, so we had money. And the people of Buhoma in Kanungu could bring waraji, nuts and fish. We used to call them poor people. But when tourism started, it started from Buhoma. And when I moved there, a place I used to ignore, I found taking beer, they're taking beers, they're eating meat. They asked me a question I remember. Do you want to eat meat? Do you want to eat? What type of meat do you want to eat? Do you want chicken? Do you want goat? Do you want pork? It was unbelievable for me because we would eat meat Christmas and Easter. That's the level we had reached after taking our livelihood. But when I reached Buhoma, I found people are happy, and I asked everyone, they said this is because of tourism. And then I decided to take tourism to our place.
Nkoko kutambura kubo kureba kandi okugaruka kubo kukora. Kanyamunyu hoped for the same fate for the people of Rubuguri.
It was not easy. I asked what brings tourists to Buhoma. It was mountain gorillas. Then I asked myself, do we have mountain gorillas? I asked who? They said, we have mountain gorillas, but you can't habituate them. There's a total ban globally, no more habituation. The donors have met. Can you imagine? They sat in Europe or America and decided not to habituate their gorillas.
Habituation refers, we normally use it in terms of mountain gorillas and chimpanzees in this country, and it refers to the regular daily visits that somebody does to a specific group of gorillas or chimpanzees, so that they get used to seeing people and they know they are safe. Because when you find these animals for the first time, they will run away from you. But as you keep going and they realize you're not posing any danger, they stop running and you can get closer and closer until such a point that they are so used to seeing people that they don't run away anymore. Then also, because now they can be easily seen and found, you can bring in the tourists to see at a fee.
How easy was it to say? And how hard was it going to be for a man who could not afford himself a bottle of beer to be able to change the minds of governments?
I asked God, I'm prayerful, said God help me. I started this journey of making sure that these gorillas in our place are habituated, and we also have tourism. I went to Kampala. I met a man called Justus Ndigarukayo, Commissioner, Wildlife. Justus told me he's going to take it on because he was on UWA board. When he went on UWA board for habituation of other gorilla groups, they voted him out because he was alone. He told me it has failed Kanyamunyu, and I was hopeful. I came back, and by the way, I didn't have money for transport going to Kampala. I would borrow money from a lady called Mutuzo in Chisoro. I went back to Mutuzo, would give me a loan. I go to Kampala. When I reached Justice, I told him, take me to a minister, the then minister called Sarapio Rukundo. I went to his office. I talked many words. He was not listening to me because I was emaciated, I was poorly dressed, and you know when you are like that, nobody minds about you. Nobody minds about you. So I told him, I'm a man, I'm a Muchiga from Muchisoro. Because he was a Muchiga, I thought he would listen to me. He was not bothered. I'm an ex-seminarian. Because I'm an ex-seminarian, I saw his facial expression was not attending to me. I said, I'm a man who has never voted Museveni, but come 2011, I'm voting Museveni and campaigning for him. Said, Kanyamunyu, sit down and tell me why you want to vote Museveni. That became my good point of approach. I told him, I don't blame Museveni. Even up to now, I don't blame our president. He's a visionary man. He looked at Kigezi when he was distributing resources and manpower. Said, what are the Bachiga having? What is in Kigezi is tourism. Because they have gorillas. The only district is mountain gorillas. It has the best panoramic views. It has lakes. It has the hospitality of the Bachiga. The cool climate. This is another Switzerland of Africa. So he said, let me give them the Minister of Tourism. It has the climbing lines, the only climbing lines in Africa. Aini Shasha, Queen Elizabeth, but best in Kigezi. So Kigezi is all around about tourism. So he says, let me give them a Minister of Tourism. I said, Honorable Minister, now, I don't blame the president if there is any problem in tourism. The minister asked me, what is the problem? Said, Rwanda has habituated all their gorilla groups. Uganda has 34 gorilla groups and only 3 are habituated. Honorable Minister, we have lost our livelihood in the park. We want to do tourism. Said, you man, you are lying. How can they do that? How can you come to brief me in my ministry? Said, Koro, the then acting ED of UA, Akankwasa. They talked much. The Akankwasa said the donors cannot allow that they habituate. That's when I realized that the minister is the president. Said, forget about the guy, they are not entrepreneurs. I want to thank Honorable Rukundo. He's a charismatic guy. I wish the president brought him back. So the minister, by that time there was no network. I saw 4 cars coming here. If I was a criminal, I would have run away. The minister came. I greeted. Actually, it is that day that I produced my first son. And we named him Rukundo. So I stood up and said, Honorable Minister, allow me to take you to discover Lake Mutanda, a lake that is number 1 in this country. This is a lake that is in between Mugahinga and Bugindi National Park. These are the only gorilla national parks in the world. A lake that in the background there is the Virunga Massif. A lake that is bilharzia free. A lake that has forested islands. A lake that has punishment island. In Lake Bunyonyi, they talk of punishment island, but in Mutanda, they take it to the punishment island and you see the skeletons. So it's a great lake. I call the whole world to come and discover this lake. Now the minister abandoned all the other itinerary. We went to Lake Mutanda. And when we reached somewhere, I showed him in Nyabalemura that the gorilla group comes to my land called Bichinji. It needs to be habituated. Honorable Rukundo said, Kanyamunyu, let me write a letter. I have the instruments given to me by the government. So he wrote a letter. I'm directing, quoting an article in the Constitution. Under this article, provision this, directing to habituate Rushaga and Ruhija. So as the minister directed, they habituated all the gorilla the two gorilla groups.
At first, when there was no tourism in the southern sector of Bwindi, there was much poaching and encroachment of to the national park. So when Kanyamunyu started fighting and advocating for gorilla habituation, when people started enjoying the benefits from tourism, people started loving conservation because they saw what was coming from conservation.
Nyine restaurant, nyine omudara gwa fruits aheru ya restaurant, nintekera abantu bona abari kwijaho ababuriju, tour guides na n'abajungu abari kuba nibenda local food.
Kaba yo mufunda shale mbaho epitsowa ya training na birugamu na akora guiding tisho mira munonga kamara primary 7 kunkanda guiding abajungu kwetoro Uganda na Rwanda na DRC. So akanyamba yanshomesa tourism
ahitwa gumwanya niwe yagutembire nejinjwe yobombe kiremu niwe yagitereho akulire ekitongole kyenanka kya NCCDF yabona kutuletera ekicombeko nacho kijatuyamba gwo abajungu baba bijire kabakazi barananka barakururuka ebibo barabona makasente barija baletuma ibintu byabo abajungu bagure kiretera abakazi babona makasente kugira ngo bayamba abana ko kubahwera n'umusukuru fees ninga no mu bitabo.
Before, our community was not exposed. Our parents used not to think about education. But when tourists started coming and we didn't have people who can speak with them, they had to develop the idea of now having their children speaking with the tourists. So the best solution was to educate the children.
Tonya Bell, a Norwegian by nationality and Ugandan by marriage, shares to us how Kanyamunyu and tourism have impacted her school and her stay in Rubuguri town.
My name is Tonya Bell. I'm originally from Norway, but I'm here. I'm married to a Ugandan and we have 2 children, the youngest being 2. By profession, I'm a medical doctor. However, the last 2 years, I have worked mainly together with this school, where I'm the directress together with my husband. Then for us as a school, is that it also brings visitors, it brings tourists to our area and to our school, and it gives the opportunities for our children to get sponsorships. It gives the opportunity for us to get donations so we can provide children with things they don't get in the village or they would never see in the village. Well, indirectly, he brought me here because he was working with this organization, Big Beyond, which was what has made me come to this area. Without it, and then without him, I would not be here. And I would not have met my husband, and we would not have started this school, and I would not stay here 7.5 years later. He's also a good friend of my husband, and so he has helped us and helped me be part of this community, opened our eyes to the possibilities around and what needs to be done and what we can do. as well as me being a professional doctor, we have also talked about how I can do my profession in this community to help this community to continue my work as a doctor.
As a reformed poacher, Kanyamunyu started by calling all other poachers for conservation.
Kanyamunyu is one of the reformed poachers because this park was gazetted in 1991, Bwindi National Park. And when it was gazetted, communities lost access. They would access the park before, but when it was gazetted, they lost access. But Uganda Wildlife Authority had no enough personnel to protect the park all the way around. So Kanyamunyu and other few, including me, we used to sneak to the forest to pick these resources we were used to, because in this area there was nothing that we are benefiting from the park until 1994, when gorilla tourism started and we saw the benefit. So that's when he mobilized other reformed poachers to form a group, and this group is now speaking for conservation.
When you get to the history of Kanyamunyu, ideally he should be a poacher, okay? And we would be fighting with him daily and probably throwing him in prison. But he turned himself around, realizing there was an opportunity for him to benefit, him and the community around him to benefit from the conservation that was happening because of the tourism. So he embraced conservation and started working with us on finding ways in which, one, he could support the communities to develop projects that could benefit them. Two, he could help us deal with any human-wildlife conflicts, because gorillas sometimes get out and they cause a conflict with the communities as they interact with them and damage some of their crops.
This interaction between the gorillas and the locals led to a threat of gorilla tracking in Nkulingo.
When Nkulingo gorilla group was habituated, it started going to the communities. And when it went to the communities, it got scabies for about 3 years without being tracked.
When one of the first cases I had to handle was dealing with a skin disease outbreak in the then critically endangered mountain gorillas. All the gorillas got sick and the baby gorilla ended up dying, unfortunately, in that group. And they only recovered when we treated them with ivermectin. And we found out that it came from people living around the park who had very little health care. This particular gorilla group liked to range outside the park in community gardens, which happens when they lose their fear of people. They go back to their former ranges, but their former ranges have been disrupted by people cutting down trees and the high human population density in the area and population growth.
A buffer zone was created which would act as a fence to stop the gorillas from crossing to the communities. Unlike electric fences and walls, the buffer zone was to be made of natural barriers.
The buffer zone, we started many projects like elephant grass, like Mutete, many that never worked. So the search was made by O and the IGCP and the AWF that tea is to be brought in the buffer zone. We thank the government of Uganda, the then chairman NCCDF called Leti Glivazi, worked with Honorable Tracy Buchana, who was the Minister of Agriculture. Government of Uganda gave us seedlings to plant in the buffer zone. But it became a nightmare because there was no road. We divided the thing into the communities. Some planted, some failed to go there. It's down in a gorge. So I had to use my wisdom to look for Mzee Garuga of Kigezi Island Tea Company. I spent the whole year trying to talk to him, refusing. Until I used my tactics, we talked and I brought him. He agreed to plant the buffer zone. And he gave a condition we discussed, me and him and Uganda Wildlife Authority, that this money that comes from the tea will go for the scholarships of our children of Rubuguli and Nkulingo Town Council.
Uganda Wildlife Authority supported us, the communities, with half of the buffer zone, and we were able to plant tea with the help of Kanyamunyu, Fidelis, when he linked us to Mr. Garuga Musinguzi, the person behind Kigezi Island Tea. And currently, we are getting 4 million every month, which goes to our pocket for scholarship, and all the beneficiaries are members, are children, and sons and daughters of this community.
The scholarship has helped me do a diploma in diagnostic ultrasound, which has been expensive course that I couldn't raise that money for school fees. And the course I have been doing was lacking in the community. So I am graduating in July 2022. I will bring back the services to the community.
During the COVID-19 pandemic, a prominent gorilla, Rafiki, was killed. As the number of visitors dropped by 80%, some found it very hard to resist going to the park.
As now we are depending much on tourism. So when the pandemic came and everything was closed, so people lacked where to get what to eat. So people resorted to go to poaching to get what to eat. When Felix was in the forest looking for bush meat, another gorilla fell into a trap. And when Felix was inside, he felt sorry for the gorilla and wanted to remove that gorilla from a snare, from a trap. So when Felix was trying to remove, the other one shouted. So Felix, in defending himself, he speared the Rafiki. So what inspired me to write that book, it is to keep the legacy of Rafiki, because it was one of the friendly gorillas in the park, and to make sure that people will come to know about it even after 1,000 years.
Conservation for generations remains to be a language of many in Rubuguri town. In the memory of Rafiki, My Gorilla Family app was made, which will continue to power conservation even in the times like those of a lockdown.
Mr. Kanyamunyu began this whole process. He's the one who, being from the community, began the conversation, began the ideas around using entertainment or festivals to try and find ways to fund conservation. I simply am a support part to this initiative. I brought the technology background and the product development background to this process, but really Fidelis is the brains behind this whole thing. We are using two particular insights. One, the fact that mountain gorillas live in families in the forest and human beings live on their mobile phones. So we're trying to get the gorillas onto your mobile phone. How we do that, we have cameras in the forest which film daily activity of these gorillas. We get this feed and we cut it into short entertainment-based videos, which you can view on your application. You're able to do virtual trekking from time to time, see what the experience actually is like. You're able to get updates on the quality of life of these gorillas, so using things like infographics. But the most important thing is the entertainment-grade value of this content. What if we put these gorillas and the fun things about them on the mobile phone? I think I should also note that gorillas are very similar to human beings. They have intrigue, family intrigue, relationship intrigue, breakups, makeups, and all these things. What if we showed the world this? So that is really the basis of what we are trying to do.
A man who has seen the true values of conservation becomes a warrior. The War of the Tea is one of the wars Kanyamunyu has fought to defend the benefits of conservation.
So the tea, it became a war because, how did it become a war? The then chairman had wanted to monopolize the supply, and he had no capacity. So we said, no, you cannot bring monopoly in a business. There were nursery bed. You could make a nursery bed, supply government. So I stood up to fight for the communities, to make sure people do nursery beds and sell government, not one person. So there was a serious war. People asked me, I can't say what I passed through on this camera. I can't even cry. It's unbelievable that what I went through. But I am happy today because people made nursery beds, supplied the government, and made money. Here, nobody would make $1 million, but people could even get 100 million from the tea nursery bed.
And where there is a true warrior, warriors are born. Boniga and Kafuga wars are some of the wars the people of Rubuguri have stood up together for conservation.
The so-called Kafuga War started when our former Member of Parliament, with a few members from the communities, attempted to grab and destroy this forest in order to use it for tea and share it amongst themselves. Yet, as members of the communities, we knew that this forest has been there. It's a forest that survived ice ages.
The then Minister of Tourism, Honorable Chiwanda Subi, came to visit here. This MP came. When the MP reached here, while I was talking, I told the minister, you cannot promote tourism to Lambule when the Member of Parliament is cutting our green belts. I stopped talking. I went and mobilized the communities in Nombe with the placards. We stopped the minister. We called the minister. We are recruiting you to to join us on the war of Kafuga. The minister, we made him repeat and say, I've joined you. And the minister wanted for a special community. He said, I have been moving all over the country. So most of the communities want to cut the forest. But this community is special because they don't want to cut their forest. Why? We had recruited the communities. Even in here, we have communities like Warden Joffrey, we have people like Bruno, Sunday, we have people like Georgie. So there are many people here in the communities who are conservation cadres. You can't touch their resource when they are there.
And Kanyamunyu is not a common person, as they think. Is a poro conservation. And for him, if you don't conserve, he doesn't deal with you. If you don't embrace sustainable tourism, you're not with him. If you criminalize the nature, he calls it you are eco-terrorist. So, I remember one time, he engaged the minister when someone was trying to cut off a natural forest. He stopped the minister, which was not easy, but indeed he succeeded on that forest conservation.
I want to thank the chairman LC5 and the Chisoro local government, which took the MP to court on behalf of the community, and we won the case.
I want to thank Kanyamunyu for the effort, for the monies, for the mobilization he put in as a person, together with every person and everybody who participated. It was a big war, but eventually we won it for ourselves, our children, and our great grandchildren. We want to thank God that we saved this forest.
Buniga, the government of Chisoro and Nalo decided to cut Buniga. Naro, because they own the forest. But this Buniga, that's where our community lodge called Clouds Mountain Gorilla Lodge. It was built there because of Buniga. Our office is on this because of Buniga. So Naro decided to cut the forest. First I found they had cut about 5 acres. I told those people, get out. They are coming to arrest you, tactfully, and I was lying. Said, you guys, get out, they are coming to arrest you. I have come as your community leader, get out. Then they came running, I gave them 50,000, then they had to go. Now the narrow person called me, said, Kanyamunyu, who are you to stop my workers? Then I asked me, I also asked him, who are you? Said, I'm the manager of Naro Nikawan Kachwekan. I told him, I'm also government. So he took me to Kyam. That is the late Tibujendwa, who came with him, like judging a case. We reached the park, the forest. He said, he did bad to cut that we should cut the end. So while we're talking, thank God, a bird called Yellow-lamped Tinkerbird gave a call. I said, cow, have you heard that bird? I said, listen, this is Yellow-lamped Tinkerbird. You want me to be part of the people who decided to cut the habitat, the only habitat of Yellow-lamped Tinkerbird. I'm requesting you, cow, give me 2 months. We call the conservation fraternity here, then we decide whether to cut it or not. Cow agreed with me, but more importantly, I broke strategically, I asked the narrow guy, when you are cutting this forest, you need EIA, Environmental Impact Assessment. You don't wake up to cut a forest. Do you have EIA? He didn't have it. So I said, please, without EIA, you can't cut this forest. That's how Buniga survived.
The NCCDF battle, or the battle that got Kanyamunyu on a track, is yet another war the people of Rubuguri are fighting.
NCCDF, the chairman, we made a constitution when we made the constitution was 4 years, rotational, Ruguli versus Nkulingo. But the current chairman decided not to leave, changed the constitution to 7 years. He bribed the people he was with, and now we are at war with him. I remember there was tear gas. I was arrested by police and put on a police car. And we have said nobody will touch our constitution because NCDF is a project that owns this lodge, that owns the buffer zone, that generates income for people to appreciate Bwindi. It was started by UA, IGCP, as a reward, as a compensation of the lost livelihood from the park. We must die for conservation of our park. I'm trying to tell you, nobody will intimidate us over our national park resources. Whether you are who, we must get our benefits from our national park. I'm telling you.
Those who have fought Kanyamunyu head to head describe him as a man who fights with his costume on.
When I first met Rubus Kanyamunyu, we were fighting actually. I was promoting an eco lodge in one of the areas where he comes from that was supposed to be promoting tourism in the area by attaching the gorilla permits of a gorilla group so that people can use that lodge so that it can be an incentive for the investor. Rups was on the other side. He was saying the gorillas permits should go to the communities and not one person who was looking after the hotel. And so there was a clash of interests. And we had to go to the minister. And when the minister called us for the meeting, Rups was there. And one of the remarkable things Rups did was that his own livelihood was depending on those gorillas. And for us to remove the permits from the gorillas was like taking the shirt away from him. So he removed the shirt in the meeting. And I thought this man was mad. So that was my first encounter with Rups. And I thought he was a madman and I should avoid him. But the more I thought about what he was doing, the more we became friends, the more we became together. And I found that actually he was a very good man. He was fighting a justified cause on behalf of the communities. And I came to understand his story, and we started working together up to now. I call him the general of the community, and he thinks I'm also a very big-hearted person.
Through the Batwa forest experience, Kanyamunyu, Athamujisha and other stakeholders have worked together to improve the livelihood of the people of the forest. The Batwa.
So through my inquiry, through my interaction with communities, and because I knew Rups, I went and visited him, and he had this idea, and I thought it was a very good idea. So we put the idea together on a piece of paper and went through it, and he told me about getting some of the Batwa that will be able to demonstrate the cultural values of the Batwa. The wonderful people, very, very resilient in terms of being able to live what we call a harsh environment, but for them, it's their home. Very different from ours. They live in the forest, they eat the forest food, very organic food. They don't need expensive roads and expensive cars And so you can say they live sustainably with the environment. And although we are not advocating for them to go back in the forest, but it would help us in terms of understanding how God and nature designed people so that we can relate and live harmoniously in the environment.
To the Batwa, Kanyamunyu is described as a lion that kills and lives for other animals to feed.
That was quite close to what he is, because he's not looking at him alone benefiting from this skill. He's looking at how can I serve my people, how can they benefit, how can they be part and parcel of the benefit that comes from conservation. So
what the Mutwa said is very true about Kanyamunyu. He's somebody who really is extremely selfless. He's one of the most selfless people I've met in the Bindi community. When he lobbies for something, it's not just for himself, it's for his whole community. I would say for his whole country. He's somebody who's like, look, if we don't have these gorilla groups there, people are always going to be poor. So when he lobbied for an increase in gorilla groups, it wasn't for him, Kanyamunyu. It was primarily to help everyone in his community.
Well, a lion is someone strong who will be strong no matter what in the community. And kills prey, well, that's the life cycle, isn't it? And then to leave it for the hyena, it leaves it for others. So those who are not able to kill the prey themselves will still eat. So he is doing the hard work so other people can gain from it.
Who would a warrior be without scars? Kanyamunyu shares some of his toughest challenges in conservation.
The battle of the tea. The battle of the tea had politicians. People came. Here I was making a lot of money. People came, started stealing my clients about 3 times, and then Wagateri was abandoned as a business. So I lost my business because of tea, but I couldn't lose the battle. I couldn't stop the battle, because my overall goal is not about myself, it's about the people. In that battle, I separated with my wife because of the tea, because the other side that never wanted, who wanted to monopolize the tea, put bad elements in her. We separated, and I remained with the children. And while she was at their home, she died. May God grant her eternal life. So that is the battle that really made me. But I don't regret going into that battle, because the amount of money the people are making is unbelievable. Into tea picking, people have stopped going into the park because they get money. I myself, every week I get paid from leaf. Even today people are picking tea. So I don't regret, because it has helped many. You can see the children are studying. Our children are studying because of the tea. So I don't regret in going to that battle. But when I recall, it wasn't easy.
Kanyamunyu believes he is not a self-made man, and he thanks all those who have shouldered him for conservation.
Mama Frumera is a special woman, because my father died when I was 3 years, and I can't dream about my father. My Mama Frumera is a selfless woman who loves people. So he put a spirit of loving people in me. My dear wife Rafiki, Christine Jelu, I had almost failed to get a suitable partner. Believe me, I traveled to Namugongo from Chisoro, 2 weeks traveling in a pilgrimage to get the right partner. I thank God he gave me Rafiki. The communities here, when I started standing as a politician, the first time I stood as a councillor, they carried me on their back, a kilometer carrying me. And I didn't have money. So the communities here inspire me. I feel cheated when I don't fight for them. Mzee Garuga told me that there is no business better than working for people. And believe me, people who have tried to work for people to solve problems are the ones who have become millionaires. So Mzee Garuga is all around who inspires me. King Caesar Development Kingdom is my strongest partner because they help me to make sure our children go to school. They help me. Any projects that we bring, Caesar Development Company comes in. Long live King Caesar. And I also know when you touch me, I have a backing. So that one is also my dear, and I'm the spokesperson of Caesar Development Kingdom. Come and join the Development Kingdom. It's not only centered in Kisoro, it is all over the country. Then there's John Friday, the commissioner of energy. I stayed with him, inspired me to have good values. Then there is Dr. Runumi, who is also a commissioner, who was the last commissioner, third commissioner, who inspires me into business and to working for people. There are many people who inspire me.
Honorary Wildlife Officer is the honor the Uganda Wildlife Authority has given to Kanyamunyu for his contributions to conservation.
Mr. Kanyamunyu was honored as an honorary warden of Uganda Wildlife Authority. That's a very huge honor. It's given to people who have shown exemplary service and dedication and commitment to the cause of wildlife conservation.
And later on, he was nominated and appointed as a honorary wildlife officer, meaning that he doesn't get pay, but he works for the protection of wildlife, and for which we are grateful.
Rubuguri continues to be one of the most conservative areas in Uganda, saving many species of trees, herbs, birds, mammals, and many other creatures, putting up schools, lodges, hospitals, roads, and other wealth-creating opportunities. Kanyamunyu and his warriors stand on guard, conserving for a new generation of warriors, a new generation of Rafiki, a new generation of hope. Kanyamunyu, the man who raised an army for conservation.